The heartbreak continues. Nagi's downfall continues to ache my heart. And with chapter 299, it gets even worse, as Ego finally gave his thoughts on Nagi. And as much as I hated saying this, as much as I hated Ego talk about Nagi this way, man, he was right. Even Isigi and Ryo, who originally opposed this idea, ended up shutting up because he makes so much sense. Satisfaction killed the cat. But not forever, as I truly believe Nagi still has a chance. In fact, I won't take it any other way. There must be a way for Nagi to survive. He is one of the best things about Blue Lock, and I really can't give up on him. And so with this in mind, I sat down and came up with a very spicy theory that would hopefully bring Nagi back home. However, it's not going to be any wild card bullshit or anything like that, since it's already been used with Kunigami. This theory is very logical and in tune with Blue Lock's writing. However, before we dive into it, first let's do a quick review of what Ego said and why he is a madman with insane foresight. He starts by locking off the losers, saying that they don't have any place in Blue Lock and they don't really matter. Or do they? Well, they don't necessarily matter for Blue Lock, but they still got salaries from real clubs, which will fit into the theory I have later. However, I gotta say, man, good riddance of Takemitsu, who actually got a lower salary by the way. I honestly did not expect it, but man, it is so fitting cause he played like ass in this game. He deserves to get a lower salary. Come on, he did nothing since the second selection, and so this is granted. And by the way, his situation is kinda similar but at the same time different than Nagi, because while Nagi lacks motivation, Takemitsu lacks the ego and the hunger required to do well in the NEL. And so despite him being a genius, he could not cut it at the end. And as I said, since he was similar to Nagi, this will be the theme of the chapter, as Ego pretty much went off and said the same thing about Nagi. And let's be honest here, this speech from Ego has to be one of the best reality checks in the show. He basically shut every fan of Nagi. Even Isigi and Ryo, who both were fascinated by Nagi's talent, they ended up kinda agreeing with Ego, like he shut them up completely. And I feel really bad because Ryo knew it was right and nothing was on his mind but just to cry for his partner. And to be honest, that was really touching. Especially because the chapter ended with Nagi just saying, I am. And I have a bad feeling that at the beginning of next chapter, he will continue by saying, I am not a striker. Kinda the opposite of what Isigi said in chapter 1. And as you all know, these last few chapters, they were all about coming full circle. Bachira telling Nagi that he failed as an egoist, kinda like Nagi did to him before. The bids finalizing in chapter 299 where Isigi is officially number 1, while he was number 299 in chapter 1. And now, since there were 300 strikers, it started with Isigi saying I am striker and ended with Nagi saying I am not a striker. However, I think even if Nagi says that would only be momentarily, because I have a feeling Nagi will miss Blue Lock. He will miss having a purpose in his life, and he can't just go back to his hedonism and playing video games, because he will have a huge void in his heart, which will be the main catalyst of the theory I am going to talk about later. However, for now, and going back to Ego's speech, he says that a genius is not about having talent, it's about cultivating and proving said talent. And I love that the writer brought Baro into the mix here. He showed us Baro specifically because he is the complete opposite of Nagi. And I'm not just talking about their ideology here, but even in situation. Baro got the crown on a silver plate from Snuffy. He was the leader of Ubers, no questions asked. However, he dropped all of that since it was not making him the best. Baro understood that adversity and facing Isigi and Kaiser head-on will be the key to him evolving. And the beautiful thing is, even after taking over Ubers and beating Isigi and Kaiser, there was no satisfaction in Baro's mind. Beating Isigi was not the end goal for him, despite it being one of his best desires, as after he did that, he went to chase another dream of showing the world who the king really is. And as you can tell, that's the exact opposite of Nagi, who actually was the architect of his downfall since the beginning, ever since his game against Isigi in the first selection. The fact that he is only chasing after beating Isigi just once, by the way. For some reason in Nagi's mind, beating Isigi once is enough. And I'm not going to lie, this is very dangerous. Football is about translating chances into goals, which means there will forever be chances for EMIYA to beat Nagi back. And so being satisfied with one victory really was weird from Nagi and really shows the lack of fire inside of his heart. And this is exactly what was infuriating to Ego. And it was double infuriating because Ryo and EMIYA could not see Nagi doing this to himself. That's why Ego went so hard and harsh on them and Nagi. Which, by the way, considering he must be a talented learner himself, I think it's triple infuriating to see a genius waste his talent the way Nagi is doing. And so Ego is not having any of it. However, I gotta say this, as much as I believed he was right, I truly was the same as Ryo here. Like, I never cared for Nagi that much, but these assholes grew so much on me. Like, seriously, these main characters of Blue Lock grew so much on my heart. And honestly, I could not see this happening to dear Nagi. Like, seriously, the boy doesn't deserve it. But fortunately, there might be still a light at the end of the tunnel for him, as what I'm about to explain to you guys is going to blow your minds again, which you already know I love doing that with my videos. So let's start with stating the obvious. Nagi is officially out of Blue Lock. There is no saving this. There is no way for him to go back to Blue Lock. However, Blue Lock is no longer the only way for these little strikers to prove themselves, especially post the U20 match. In fact, the NEL specifically is a bidding war, with actual real teams throwing money to get the Blue Lockers. And even players who are valued very low have a great chance at performing well in their respective clubs and raising their value. As long as they are not at zero, everyone has a chance, even Igagori here, which means for some of these players who got locked off despite having an offer, there is still hope for them to dominate and regain their position in Japan's national team. But I know, you might be asking yourself now, hope for what? There are only few days remaining until the U20 World Cups. Well, that's the beauty of the PXG game. Not only did we get a game-changing explanation of the ego types, but we also got a confirmation that the U20 World Cup isn't the only national championship we will be getting. I mean, at this point, EMIYA still needs his revenge on Noah and Loki. And of course, Baro and Snuffy need to get into it. I mean, it's not going to be like Baro brought Snuffy out of retirement for nothing. It of course is going to lead somewhere. Then there is the fact that in episode Nagi, the pros we got after the second selection all now became far more interesting. And so I am sure of it, there will be another World Cup. A pros level World Cup that will end Blue Lock. But going back to Nagi, how would that work and how does it relate to him? Well, first I gotta say, I doubt we will be getting the U20 World Cups and then right after it the Pros World Cup. It honestly would be weird, confusing and kinda lazy writing because it will be the same structure and championship all over again. And also the rotation of players would stay the same, I would say, and so that would really hurt Blue Lock. And so I thought of something refreshing, something big enough to carry both World Cups, something like the Neo Egoist League, where it's all about the clubs, but this time not the U20 clubs, but the actual main teams of the clubs. And this would act as the perfect transition towards the real World Cups, much like the NEL prepared the Blue Lockers for the U20 World Cups. This arc would act the same for the pros level. It would take the Blue Lockers from just being the best U20 players to ones who can stand against the pros. And this is specifically where Nagi can shine and have a real chance at joining the Japanese national team again. It will not be the U20 team, but the actual team for Japan. You see, what I am theorizing about here is actually so massive, and I gotta give a huge shout out to Extendo Man for this. He inspired me to make this video, as a Champions League arc with the pros level clubs would be insanity and would do wonders for the Blue Lock manga. You see, for how great the NEL was, this would be the natural next level insanity. It would be all what the Blue Lockers need in order to face the pros. And I know this might extend Blue Lock to like 800 chapters, but man, it would be the dream, right? I for once am enjoying Blue Lock so much and would love to get more chapters from it. As for what this means for Nagi, well, I believe while the Blue Lockers will continue with ego, Nagi would need to take himself seriously for once and stop riding the coattails of his talent. There he needs to prove himself with Menshine's U20 again. He needs to carry them as their best striker. And from there he can reach the pros level and play for the real Menshine next to Chris Prince. And he would do all of this in hopes of facing and teaming up again with his fellow Blue Lockers. However, not only that, he will do it with the desire to be the absolute best in the world. And given the fact that Nagi has probably the second biggest potential in the show after Rim, I really can see him dominating the Premier League. And then, even though this is a stretch, I can see him and Chris Prince being one of the great threats in the Champions League arc. And if anything, I feel he should be the one to eliminate Baro, Isigi or Bachira's team. It would be just perfect writing, man. Everything coming full circle. From there, after an amazing performance, and not even needing to win the Champions League, just due to that amazing performance, Nagi will regain his spot in the Japanese team. And then with the rest of the Blue Lockers, they win the grandiest of them all, the World Cups. This honestly would be the perfect redemption arc for Nagi if the writer chose to do anything at all about him. It's built on hard work and him actually fighting to death. But also, it's not some bullshit like the wild card that actually led to nowhere with Kunigami. This is a well-constructed comeback story that would actually feed generations. And hey, it's also extending Blue Lock by a few years for the Champions League, so yeah, I will be enjoying the shit out of it. However, that's all I've got for you today, guys. Please let me know what do you think of this theory and if it is plausible for Blue Lock. But with that, until next time, thank you for watching.